Hey everybody, I hope you're having a great day. Today we're going to be taking a look at Banner of Ruin, and this is actually going to be my first semi-scripted video in a while. Banner of Ruin, it actually releases today as of the uploading of this video, and you can pick it up off Steam. The information will be in the description below. Anyway, what is Banner of Ruin? It is a card battler, or as I like to put it, they're a spire-like. Anyway, but what's so special about this one? Well, in this one, instead of picking a class at the beginning, you select a starting party of 2 different animal characters, and from there you select events by picking one of 3 cards, or at least up to 3 cards. Sometimes you'll get blocks or walls or crowds that kind of get in your way, and that essentially just means that that space is unavailable and you have to pick one of the other spaces. The non-combat scenario events play out pretty typically. You can enter a shop where you get some dialogue options and you get to choose, like, I'm gonna do this or I'm gonna do that, and you know, you either get something, you lose like health, or you take damage, or you can remove a card, or cards change sometimes. It's pretty typical. I did find that like a lot of the options didn't really give you very interesting responses, but you know, it's serviceable, it's fine. But when you do enter combat, that's when you get to see this game kind of like show what's a little bit different about it, but you know, it also gives you kind of an idea of what's going to be the same. Card battlers, obviously, you draw cards, you play them. But in Banner of Ruin, like mentioned earlier, you have a party. And this party also has a few attributes that aren't really found in other, well, I shouldn't say other card battlers, not typically found in most card battlers. I'm sure other ones do stuff like this as well. But you get equipment that comes in the form of armor, shields. Sometimes you can either dual wield 2 weapons, or you can have a 2-hander, sword and shield, axe and shield, that sort of thing. Armor will determine how much defense you have at the beginning of a fight, which, if you can find some of the really beefy armor, that is really nice, but we'll get on more of that later. One of the things that is very important is positioning. You have a grid, which is a rank, which is, you know, side by side, like you beside the rest of your party, and then you have a lane, which is you and the person behind you. There are defensive maneuvers you can take that move your character like to whatever space you want it to go. And if you do that, you can actually avoid attacks and kind of make the enemy attack count as you evading it. And in doing that, you completely ignore damage. So there's a lot of strategy in positioning and killing the right enemy, because like you can see who the enemies are targeting as well. So that's pretty interesting right there. Now, I did mention that equipment takes part in this as well. The way that plays out is when you equip like an axe, you get a card in your deck associated with that axe, and you select who you want to play, who you want to use the card. Each unit has 2 stats. They have stamina and they have willpower. Stamina is used to do most of the attacks, and you know, it's the more combative stat, the general purpose stat, whereas willpower, or I guess will, is primarily used for utility, like drawing cards, or sometimes applying effects to people, that sort of thing. As you level up your characters, you also get like character skills and traits. Traits just trigger based on certain criteria during a fight, but skills are basically just a permanent card added to your deck. Although, you can lose units. When a character dies, they are gone forever, and all of the skills that they were associated with will still be in your deck, up until the next fight, in which case they will all be removed. Obviously because the character can't use them anymore. One thing I do want to make a note of is I felt like outside of the tutorial run, the game was really stingy with new equipment, which I'll actually get into that a little bit more at the end of the kind of description of the game. It's possible to add more members to your party as well. You have to kind of go through a gauntlet of scenarios, but once you make it to a certain point, you will be able to hire someone, and I'm fairly certain you're also able to run into events that will also cause you to receive a party member. The game is also fairly difficult, so I have still yet to complete a full run, so there's still a lot of things I'm still not quite sure of, but you know, I've learned enough to get a feel for the game and understand it. One thing I will say is once you get through that gauntlet and you have the option to hire a new character, you better hope you have money, because you're going to need that extra character. I feel you have the option to heal and you have the option to shop when you get to that point, but those options, at least for the first time you receive those options, you almost have to have a character. I think you can even hire more than one character too, which could also be really beneficial. Drawing cards is also kind of like, you know, you have to make sure you can draw enough cards to support the number of units you have. Otherwise, you're just going to be wasting stamina and that sort of thing. Now, I've played a lot of games like Banner of Ruin. You know, I jumped on the Slay the Spire bandwagon the moment that game came out. I got really addicted to Monster Train when that came out, and there's a few smaller ones in between those two games that I've just been really interested in recently, and I'm probably going to make a video about this eventually, but there's a game called Neoverse, which is like Waifu Slay the Spire, and you know, I'm going to maybe get into that, but you know, like from my experience playing games like this, I did find Banner of Ruin to have a lot of potential, but there's a few things that I would suggest that I think could really improve the overall enjoyment and flow of the game. And the first is speeding up combat. One of the things I found is because you're controlling multiple units and you're up against multiple units, the combat really drags. And I think by like either lowering health pools of enemies and allies, or just upping the damage you can cause during a fight, would make everything a lot more glassy. And this would be like it would raise the risk to reward factor. You could, on top of that, also add more utility to cards, like, you know, always have a strategy to get out of things. Like a lot more movement, a lot more drawing cards, making the individual cards stronger or easier to really stack up the damage. You know, like, the game should not be afraid to let you one round an enemy regularly, like very regularly, but also if you play your cards incorrectly, have the enemies basically just delete your units. I do think another thing too is don't be afraid to give the player more units to work with and give them more equipment to equip them, because if they're going to be losing units more regularly, gaining units regularly would also really, it would increase the flow of the game, or speed up the flow and increase the fun factor. I think about Darkest Dungeons when I suggest this, because in Darkest Dungeons, you're not going to be, like, you can sometimes play Darkest Dungeons in a way where you are intentionally sending a squad of units to their death in order to protect your better units, but you should never feel like, you can never really cling to a unit in Darkest Dungeons, and although this would be more like hot swapping, rather than between campaigns losing units, I think it would really benefit to have, you know, a more circulate your units a lot more. Like I said though, this game's got a lot of potential, and despite my grievances with the balance and maybe kind of how the game flows, I did really enjoy Banner of Ruin. One of the things it does that I didn't mention this entire time was aesthetic and presentation. It's got a really great art style. When you change equipment on your units, the unit's armor actually changes, and like, you know, upgraded versions of like you can get leather armor, and then you can get like advanced leather armor that looks the same but has more stuff added to it. And I think that's really cool. And you know, when you change a weapon, your character obviously is holding a different weapon. It's good stuff. And the presentation outside of just the art style is decent too. Like, the game comes off as very pretty. When you get into like scenarios, the scenarios do a good job at illustrating things. When you have like dialogue options, I do think the dialogue options could be enhanced to be a little bit, to give you more options, but like at base value, it's still good stuff. And there's something to be said about, you know, if I think the problem to a game is balance rather than like art or presentation, then that's a good problem to have, because balance can change on a dime. You can do like a you know, a quick patch and suddenly the game is balanced entirely differently. But you know, trying to go back and redo all the art or all the, like, you know, design elements, that's a lot more work, and I'm interested in seeing what the developers will come up with. And so with that, I'm hoping to keep my eye on them and see where they go from here. But yeah, I think that's everything I really wanted to say about the game. Like I said at the beginning, if you want to check it out for yourself, I will leave the information you need in the description. You can check it out. If you like this video, consider leaving a sub or a comment or a like, you know, any of those things, I don't care. Yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.